you. One day last month, I came to my office at the State Department, and there was a notice there saying, please come down at such and such an hour and greet the new Secretary of State. So at the time, I went down to the lobby, we all greeted him, and he gave us a short speech. And in it, he talked about his career. And he talked about how, after college, he started as an engineer, and then he spent 41 years at the same company, working his way all the way up to CEO. And it really struck me because it's so rare to hear a career progression like that, where you stay at the same company. And the vast majority of my friends, and generally anybody who I know, has already changed careers at least once. And it's accepted that most people these days will change careers multiple times over the course of their professional life. And so people often ask me, well, how is it that you went from being a classical musician to being a diplomat? That's a huge leap. And I think, well, you know, it didn't feel that way to me. It felt actually kind of natural. And they asked me, well, how'd you do it? And I said, well, I sort of had these building blocks or things that I sort of always kept. And so just as a quick question, how many of you have ever had a time in your life where you felt sort of a bit disoriented, where you have these ideas in your head about what you want to do with your life, but you don't know how to make them fit together? And you're like, well, what should I do with my life? What am I doing here? Can I just sort of see? Okay. Yes, all right, I've had those feelings too. But what I did was I had a set of 3 basic building blocks. And I took some of those other ideas in my head, and I applied them with those building blocks, and I put them together. And that's how I sort of made change in my life whenever I face what I call pivot points, which are points where you reach a state where you're like, I need to make a change, or life is forcing you to make a change, and you don't know quite where to go with it. So hopefully by sharing a few experiences, some of my pivot points, I can sort of help you find your own building blocks. And so when you face those periods, you too can make seemingly large changes. So what are my building blocks? Well, it is a desire for travel, first one, a desire for continuous learning, and a need for independence. And so how did I arrive at those? Well, I grew up as a military brat, so we were moving every 3 to 4 years. And so for me, travel became just part of my life. And so no matter what I did, I needed to be able to travel. The need for continuous learning also grew from that, because when you're moving to a new region every few years, you have to learn everything all over again. You have to meet new friends. You're in a different part of the country or a different part of the world. And so that natural curiosity that you have, it stuck with me, and I needed it in whatever I did. And the need for independence and a significant amount of responsibility grew out of me being a musician, because I was a classical musician. It's a highly individualistic field, and I need that control, you might even say. I need a little bit of control in my life. And so that's where that came from. So to build on that, starting as a musician, I came to Hopkins to study at Peabody, and I was a classical trumpet player. And I thought, you know, after I finish this, I'm going to go off to Europe, and I'm going to become a professional musician or a conductor. And I'm going to study German so I can go and live in Vienna and do my thing. But at the same time, I had this idea that, you know, I really kind of like law and government and politics. I don't quite know what to do with that, but we'll see. And so I took some courses up at Homewood campus, and I took one in particular at the sociology department called Criminal Justice and Corrections. And it included an internship at the public defender's office in Baltimore. And so when I took that internship, you see life from a different way. You get to see the court system up close and personal. You're seeing issues like access to justice. You're seeing people having to deal with courts and judges and lawyers and the police in a way that's up close and personal. You're not just reading about it or watching it on TV. You're actually seeing it. And that really served as the first pivot point in my life, because I'm like, well, I have, this is really interesting work, but I still like music. So every musician needs a day job, pretty much, because when you start out, you don't exactly have a steady income, so you need something to pay bills and feed you while you're trying to, be the next Mozart or whoever you want to be. So I said, well, I'll take music and I'll take law, I'll put them together, and I'll become an entertainment industry lawyer. That sounds really good. And so I was like, then I went off to law school. And so I went to the University of Kentucky, again, traveling, and there I kept on with my politics, and I was like, I'll help out on a few campaigns. I got elected to student government, and I ended up spending the summer between my second and third year working for the governor in economic development. And again, I was like, hey, this is really interesting. I'm seeing the differences between urban and rural and the vast amount of gaps in our own country, even in one single state. And I was like, well, that's interesting, but I don't know what to do with it. And then I just sort of put it out of my head because I got the opportunity to go study in Great Britain, so I went off. And so then I start my career. I start as a lawyer working in London, right at the start of the financial crisis. And it's this period of uncertainty. You don't know what's happening. You read about the economy crashing here and there and banks failing, and again, you don't know what's going on, but during these periods, there's also opportunity that you wouldn't normally get. So it turned out at my firm, there was an opportunity to go to Vienna, of all places, to work on international disputes with a small team of lawyers in our office there. And so I was like, hey, I speak German somewhat. I've always wanted to be in Vienna. I'll go. And so they sent me off. Next thing I know, I'm living in Vienna. I live right down the street from the Vienna Academy of Music, where I thought that I was going to go and study and be the next conductor. And I walk by that place every single day on my way to work. And I didn't know it at the time, but here it was, past, present, and future, meeting all at the same point and serving as my second pivot point. Because on one hand, I have all this music. I'm living essentially in a capital of classical music. I'm working as a lawyer, I'm traveling. I'm working on really interesting disputes on issues that I'd never dealt with before. But at the same time, Vienna is also a city of diplomats. It's the capital. All of the embassies are there. There's a large UN presence there. There's several other smaller international organizations there. And in fact, one of my colleagues was married to a diplomat who worked at our US embassy in Vienna. And so I got to meet all of these diplomats. And I was like, hey, this is interesting. You guys travel a lot. You change jobs every 3 to 4 years. You get a new one. You can totally change what you do. And in fact, you speak for your governments. You have a lot of independence and responsibility there. That's something I want to think about. And I was like, I'll think about it. And then I got the opportunity to go off and live in Berlin as a lawyer at the same firm. And I was like, well, I like law, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to make a change. And I was like, actually, being a diplomat meets those 3 building blocks. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so I applied, and I got in. And so everything was going great. And then I got my first assignment. They told me, you are going to Mumbai, India, and you are going to be the political officer there at the US consulate. And so just imagine for a minute. You've been living in the developed world. Just a few short years ago, you were living in Vienna, and Berlin, and London, snowboarding in Switzerland, you were going to Italy, and Hungary, and all these other places. And you're suddenly dropped, almost literally dropped, into a city of 20 million people with extreme poverty, living literally next door to extreme wealth. You're told, this is an English-speaking country, you'll be all right. And the first time you get in a taxi, you quickly realize this is not English-speaking at all. And just to add a little bit more to that, they told you you're going to be a political officer, but they didn't tell you what that means. And in fact, they didn't tell you anything about Indian history or Indian government or Indian politics or really anything at all, let's be honest. And just to add a little bit more to that, you spend your first week in country sick because you're not used to the food. And then you only found out three weeks before you were going that you were actually going to be assigned to Mumbai. They also didn't tell your employer, the US consulate, that you were going to be coming to India as well. So there was no permanent housing for you when you get there. So I was disoriented beyond belief. I had never been in a situation this crazy. And so the natural tendency is to sort of hunker down and just withdraw and just sort of grab onto whatever you can. But instead, I used those building blocks to make this assignment work for me. I started by taking free Hindi classes that were offered for employees at the consulate, so I could at least get in a taxi, and know how to get from point A to point B. I started traveling, first because I had to for work, but then I started, traveling around the country as a tourist. It's a lot to see. This is interesting. There's a lot going on. And then I started meeting friends through that. Started to get to know India. I read some books, got some Indian history lessons, learned about politics and culture. And then, through that, I was able to make that third block work for me, because all of a sudden I could then, instead of just reacting in my job, I could go out, I could shape the job because I knew what I was doing finally. And it served as the third pivot point because it shifted me away from my previous thoughts of just being in the developed world. And I knew at that point I wanted to work in the developing world. And so I got the opportunity after that to study Arabic. And so then I went off to Jordan. And again, I saw yet another eye-opening experience. I was working with refugees. I was seeing the conflicts in Iraq and Syria up close and personal because they were right next door to you. In fact, you could even drive up to a point on the border, and in some days you could even see shelling going on over the border in Syria. And again, it was seeing it up and close and personal instead of just reading about it, and it really made me want to do more in the developing world. And so when I came back to DC, I got the chance to work in our economic affairs department. And so I took my desire to work in the developing world and I put it with that old idea of working in economic development. I put them together. And I now work on economic development, focusing on a government initiative which brings broadband internet access to the developing world as a tool of economic development. And so, to sort of bring it broader, we're all under construction here. We're all works in progress. And it's really easy, especially these days, to just feel that your own life is unstable. And then you look out in the world and you see nothing but instability around you. So you just feel like you just want to shelter in place and withdraw and just stay wherever you are because that's where you're comfortable. But life doesn't always allow you to do that. And so if you have building blocks, just those basic core ideas that you feel that you need in your life no matter what you do, and then you take them and you combine them with some of those other vague interests which you may have never even had a chance to work on, but you just think, actually, that's really interesting. And you put them together, you can really make really, really interesting changes. My building blocks took me from being a trumpet player who would talk Mozart and Mahler all day to being a diplomat who works with technology companies, who talks about TV spectrum auctions and how to bring internet to the poorest regions of the world. That's where it took me. With your building blocks, who knows where it's going to take you? Thank you.